Time extended. You won.
Yo, what it do, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. We got our next project lined up, man. It's 2017 R1 that I won from IAA. I put in a max bid on this bike for $2,850 and won the bike for $2,800 while I was sitting in an airport about to board the plane. So thankfully that bid took place before I was able to board the plane, because as we know, once you get on the plane, you get in the air, phones really don't work that well. So without further ado, man, let's get into this bike, do a quick damage assessment. Alright guys, so first thing first, as you notice, I replaced the front wheel on this bike. Was temporarily replaced with this orange wheel because the forks were like completely destroyed. And after I shot this video here and we tried to move the bike around, the forks completely gave out and broke away from the bike. So I had no way to really move the bike around, and the front wheel that was on it was completely destroyed as well. So this front wheel actually came from a 03 R1 that I'm currently working on. So I decided to just put it on the bike so I could move it around a little bit easier. It came with a few goodies on it already. It has a ECU flash by Chris Moore with Moore Mafia. A lot of these parts that look like they are just trashed, if you take a closer look, you'll realize most of these connections are still intact. The only ones that I really found that were broken were like this one, which is a turn signal. It's a blinker. And guess what? I'm replacing those anyway because I hate the mirrors on these bikes, and I don't really use mirrors anyhow. I always replace them with block offs, so I'm just gonna use block off blinkers. So that's not a big deal to me. Also found this guy. Looks brand new too, like really good condition still. So with that, sad to say, probably got to get this thing reflashed, just because I don't know what all the flash came with the tune. It could have been a dyno tune, I don't know. But the bike is obviously missing parts. You know, being at the auction, these bikes sit in the auction yard for extended amounts of time. Sometimes those are leaves. Yep, that's the factory dog bone. I've looked the frame over pretty well as my my homeboy that picked it up for me. Gotta replace those cables, gotta replace this cable. Thankfully, the way these bikes are designed, a lot of critical parts were saved because of stuff like this that broke. This broke when the gas tank was attached. Gotta replace that subframe. This whole side, other than this footrest, appears to be in pretty good shape. The brakes still actually work, which is crazy. The brake still works. It wasn't leaking any brake fluid. or anything like that. The headers are completely gone. The radiator is completely gone. It's crushed. The oil cooler is smashed up pretty bad. It was a front end impact on this bike. So this part that holds the steering dampener broke off, which isn't a big deal because they make top mounted steering dampeners, and that's what I'm going to go with, a top mounted steering dampener. The wheel was completely trashed. The tire was trashed. So this wheel is actually from an 03R1 that I'm working on. It's just, like I said, it's just on here so I can move the bike around. Same with these forks. They don't belong, nor do they fit. But I just like I said, stuck them in the frame just so I can move this bike around until I get around to putting the proper forks, the correct forks in. But going through the damage with this thing, the airbox obviously was destroyed along with the tank and whatever this guy is. But the down thing that happened while this bike was outside is that it rained, and when it rained, with the airbox being broken, water was able to basically leak down into the cylinders and fill up the oil pan. So one of the first things I did when I got this bike for that reason was drain the oil. Just didn't want, bad oil sitting in the bike for extended amount of time, or water, which it ended up being a lot of water. When I first pulled the drain plug out, it was pure water that started draining, and then, milkshake came behind it. Thankfully, the bike has not been started since the accident happened. I'm going to pull the oil pan, and the engine could have some damage on it still, from this. But from what I was able to see, the front wheel went back. It crushed the oil cooler and part of the radiator into the headers. And when that happened, the headers got folded back into the motor, into the engine, but it does not seem like it did enough impact to crack the engine block or anything like that. But like I said, I'm praying that it didn't, but from what I can see, it didn't. Looks like it just damaged some of the radiator hoses, oil cooler, stuff like that. So we will find out how bad that is. Hopefully, front master cylinder still has oil in the reservoir, no leaks. So this is another part that is, still good. Still got the headlights intact. I don't know if the tabs are all good on this thing, but they look like the tabs are still pretty good. And well, maybe not that one, but still has the headlights attached on both sides. This is the throttle. Obviously needs a new clip on, but the throttle assembly is still good. The bar ends are still good somehow. The bar ends are still good on both sides. A little rash right here. So guys, this is my parts bike. I'm going to be using most of the parts from this R1M. It's a 2015. I'm going to use most of the parts from this bike to rebuild the 2017. I got this bike for $4,000 because it is a 2015, and with the 2015s it had that engine issue. I don't know if it contributed to the catastrophic failure on this bike, but one of the pistons decided to see daylight, as you can see here. So I got this bike to basically rebuild the 2017 with its parts. So as an added bonus, I was also able to pick up this 2016 from the same guy. This bike caught on fire and he bought it for I can't remember how much he purchased it for, but he purchased it because his plan was to use part of the engine to rebuild his engine on the 2015, but apparently that didn't work out for him, and he says the bike has just been sitting in his garage, and he wanted to get rid of both of these bikes because his job is going to require him to be away from home a good bit. And since he was buying that M1K, he didn't want to have these bikes just taking up space. So this bike, like I said, it caught on fire, and it has engine and frame damage, but it does have a lot of good usable parts, and I'm probably gonna need them. Has the ignition with the keys. The forks are still good. All of this hasn't been tested, but the switches work like they should. No indication that there's anything wrong with all of this stuff. So this in itself is essentially a parts bike. This is a 2016, this is a 2015, and this is a 2017. Crazy how that order happened. I didn't plan it, it just happened, whatever. But what my plan is to remove the majority of these parts from this R1M, which includes the electronic forks, rear suspension, the gauge, phone case, I love that thing, the subframe, brake booster. Don't know about the ECU. That all depends, because I'll just have to do a little bit more research when it comes to the R1M and the ECU. I've heard that really all you need is the electronic connections for the shocks. The ECUs will, all be the same, and it's actually from the gauges to the harness input for these forks and shocks. So after doing more research, I found out that you do have to bring over the ECU as well in order for everything else to work like it should, coming from an R1M to a non-R1M model. But have the key for this bike. I'm not going to use these R1M fairings, so I will more than likely either be selling them or putting them onto this bike. I say this bike because I don't know which way I'm going to go with that. I'm going to unfortunately paint this R1M tank, however, to match this bike. I don't know yet if I will keep this bike, but I'm planning on rebuilding it as a 2020, putting a custom paint job on it, probably doing the wheels, which I will need another front wheel because I don't want to, well, I actually need a front wheel because I'm going to have to be able to move these bikes around, and it's hard to do with one wheel. And I'm going to have to put this wheel back onto the 03R1 at some point. When I got this bike and I got the VIN information and everything, I contacted the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles. They told me, the mileage, last recorded mileage, which, man, I can't remember, but I know it's less than 11,000 miles on it. And the dash for this R1M has 7,222 miles on it. But also, I have a spare dash that came from this bike, and it has 2,600 miles on it. So this bike and this dash has 26,000 miles on it. Excuse me, I said 2,600, but I mean 26,000 miles on it. Alright guys, so now that you have a brief rundown of what's going on with these bikes and what to expect moving forward, on the next video we'll start breaking down the 2017 R1 and exposing the unseen issues with this bike. So until then, like, share, subscribe to the channel, and holler at your boy. Peace.